Two guys, one movie. I got my cake edition.
In 3D.
On ice. Actually underwater.
And it's the most fun you'll have being scared.
Yes, and today we are talking about Creepshow. This is Steve Arviso and
Charles Musick.
And welcome to the latest edition of our Halloween countdown for 2014.
Creepshow 1 and 2.
Creepshow 1 and 2, not 3 though.
Not 3.
No, we're not.
We already did the unofficial part 3, Tales from the Dark Side.
That's right, Tales from the Dark Side, the movie. Let's specify that, just in case people were wondering.
According to Tom Savini.
Tom Savini, yes, Tom Savini himself, the special effects master who's
actually in this. He's the, at the very end, he's the trash guy in part 1 of Creepshow. Mm-hmm. One of the trashmen that's picking up the comic and is like, oh cool, we can order x-ray glasses.
And he's the creep in part 2.
Oh really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
He's the actor portraying the creep. He's not the voice though.
Okay.
No, he's not the voice. The voice is, portrayed by someone else. But yeah, he is in this. Interesting enough. And, yet another anthology series. We do love our anthology series here. We're big fans. I would say we're big fans of stuff like Twilight Zone and Tales from the Dark Side, Monsters.
But like Tales from the Dark Side and Twilight Zone, they did 3 each, you know? Mm-hmm. And then they would have, of course, like a prologue or something to round it all about. An epilogue. Where Creepshow actually has, I believe it's 5?
The first one did have like 5 stories
plus
to
the prologue epilogue.
It had the bookends to it as well. Part 2, however, did do a lot like the Tales from the Dark Side and the Twilight Zone movie by having a through-line story. There was a story that filled in the gaps in between the stories and kind of had a reason for why they existed. In the Twilight Zone movie, I believe it was Dan Aykroyd picking up a hitchhiker. Forget who was the hitchhiker, but Dan Aykroyd was like a ambulance driver or something like that.
At the very end, he picks up, he's taking John Lithgow away after the plane lands and is all messed up.
Yeah.
He's like, want to see something really scary? But yeah, he's in throughout. He's the interlude.
He's the interlude portions, and he's pretty much the one that's supposed to be telling these stories. They're telling scary stories throughout the whole thing.
And, you know, I gotta start right away with, I hadn't seen part 1 in years. It's part 2 that I remember the most. So I went back and watched part 1. If I was a little boy, you know, my father took away my comic book and was yelling at me and stuff, and then I see this dead creep walk up to my window, I'd be scared shitless. He's just like, yeah, cool, creep, you know? It's like, man, that thing looked evil, too.
Well, he was only evil to the people that wanted to be evil.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. There's a little fantasy story for the kids, and that's pretty much where the whole concept of these horror anthologies came from, is from the old EC comics, the stuff like Tales from the Crypt, the Vault of Horror and whatnot, the House of Mystery from DC Comics.
Well, it's actually interesting because the Father's Day, the first, after the prologue, the first tale the creep tells us, was actually written specifically for the movie by Stephen King.
Yep. There's several stories throughout both films.
And I noticed the constants in all the stories are kind of like, you know, lover's betrayal or money grubbers, you know, or something like that.
They're very awful, sinful people.
Yes, that actually deserve to basically get it.
And honestly, that's exactly what they would go on with Tales from the Crypt and do. That's what Tales from the Crypt was notorious for doing that, where even today it gets a bit of heat, and it did back then too, the comics that is, for how misogynistic it was. You see any of the females in these stories, they're awful women. And it's like they bring it upon, they ask for it. Is pretty much how they treat women in these stories. And the men are kind of like, they're assholes, but it's like the women are somehow worse. And he gets a lot of flack for that.
In the crate story, as soon as they find, the one professor finds out about the beast, he instantly has the idea to use it to kill his wife that he's been planning forever.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been fantasizing about killing his wife. So it just, you know, even he deserved to get it in the end.
Yeah. And it's interesting in the way that they do this because, you know, Tales from the Crypt did this too. They had the bookends, they had the host. Obviously that was based off the comics. Here we had the creep in a little bit in the first one. But like I said, Tom Savini plays him throughout the second one entirely. And it has its own little story too, where it's this kid that's getting picked on by bullies. He's reading the comics like we see in the first one. And, you know, you were saying that Tom Savini's like, oh, we can get x-ray glasses. In this one, in the second one, he gets, Venus flytrap bulbs. And he's imagining it's gonna be this big evil thing, and it's just a bunch of seeds. And eventually it comes to life and wrecks shit at the end. It was a nice little story. But as far as the first one, you said you weren't much of a fan of the first one as opposed to the second.
Father's Day, I mean, I don't know. It was made in 1982, and I'm sure on those premises, you know, it holds up, but I've seen that story numerous times, you know.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't know, it didn't hold up to me. One that actually did was the second one, The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill, where Stephen King actually plays.
Stephen King's acting, yes. He didn't do too bad in it either.
The one thing I always thought, there was the theme that there were money grub, they killed people or, they deserved it. This guy was just kind of a yokel that didn't really know any better. He was hoping to pay off his loan by selling this meteorite. Yeah. And then it completely consumes him and his farm, and he basically ruins the world what they hint at.
Yeah, you see, in Father's Day, we had a group of spoiled, bratty, rich kids coming to their father's home for Father's Day, and every year he's supposed to get a cake, and he's supposed to be it's his day. It's almost like a big birthday thing, because they treat him like shit the rest of the year. It's his one special day. He's always looking forward to it. And he dies during the story. Oh, no, I think they come back to in remembrance of him. That's right.
Oh, the woman who killed him, actually, Bedelia, she goes to the cemetery and she spills her wine or whiskey, and that kind of reanimates him.
Yeah, he comes back for revenge. Pretty much, he gets one last great Father's Day, and takes out every last spoiled little brat. Kind of like how every parent wants to take out their awful little child when they have one. But like you were saying, in the second story, we get Stephen King, who's this yokel farmer who just kind of stumbles upon bad luck, and it has a really downer ending.
Yeah. I mean, and with the weatherman predicting the rain, and you see that it's progressing from his farm, and on the telephone poles, you just assume that it's going to completely consume.
But even what happens to Stephen King's character is just, the whole story is a downer.
He shoots himself.
Spoiler alert. The first one is kind of a nice ending, because you get this sad old man coming back from the grave to take vengeance on the people who wronged him. Nice vengeance story. They deserved it. This one guy, it's sad. It's a depressing story.
And he didn't deserve it. He just wanted to sell it to pay off his bank loan.
Yeah, and he didn't know that he was going to get covered in what he did. But going on to the next one is one of your favorite ones, is it not?
It's the one that I remember the most. And, how could you not? It's actually the longest story on this. Yeah. And it's like 30 minutes. But,
I think so, yeah.
Ted Danson, Leslie Nielsen. Basically, Leslie Nielsen confronts Ted Danson, he's cheating with Leslie Nielsen's wife. So Leslie Nielsen just gets this plan to bury them in the sand up to their necks and let the tide come in and drown them. And he tells them, of course, if you can hold your breath long enough to where the sand breaks up, then you can get out. And he sets up a video camera, which is just even more messed up to watch it. Unfortunately for him, after they get killed, they come back to life and get revenge on him and actually put him in the sand. I mean, it's a tale of revenge, but they were in the wrong in the first place, you would think. But then again, he was kind of a mean husband too, so they all kind of deserved it, really.
Right?
The creep got, satisfaction in the third story.
But the crate is probably my favorite one out of the entire. I really like the one starring Stephen King, the farmer story. What was the name of the story with Stephen King again?
Stephen King, The Lonesome Death
of Jordy Verrill. Yeah, I really like that one, but for some reason I have this weird attachment to the crate, which is based off of, I believe it's a Stephen King short story, one of his earlier short stories, if I remember right. Guy finds a crate with a goddamn evil monkey of some sorts in there.
Evil monkey, gorilla, yeti.
Something like that, yeah.
Yes. Eviler than the ones from Congo. And you know the ones I'm talking about, people. You know.
It's worse than the one in Chris's closet.
Yes. Well, he's misunderstood. But
he has a reason to be mad.
This looks like something right out of the 50 sci-fi horror films.
Yes. This is a very classic short story. Guy finds crate. Crate has evil monkey in it. Guy decides to use evil monkey for his own nefarious ends.
Well, kills a few people too. Then he decides to use it. Then he crates it up and throws it in the, lake or river or whatever, and, then of course we see that, it's still alive.
Yeah.
I mean, each ending kind of gives you, that it doesn't really have a full, it gives you that, what if, or if this is, what's the prediction ending where you gotta kind of figure it out yourself.
It's pretty funny too, because a lot of people, Stephen King had a heavy hand in writing this, obviously. Same with George Romero. George Romero being the director for this film. Both films. But a lot of people don't understand or a lot of people complain, especially more general fans of Stephen King stories, is that he never has a great ending. Very few of his stories have really solid endings. And it's true. as far as being a very tight, concise ending that a lot of people prefer, he goes more towards the open-ended one. The concept of a story doesn't really end. You know, as long as the person or the thing is still alive, it's just going to keep on going. You're just stopping at a certain point. You just decide this is where that story comes to a close. So you get that a lot in here too. And it was I think it's because he was influenced so much by these comics growing up that he kind of adopted that mentality of, well, it just ends right here. There's more that can happen, so...
Yeah, but also leaving that open, I mean, it works for some stories, not all.
Yeah, not all.
But it is nice to, let you kind of decide for yourself what you think happens.
It's very true. And we were discussing that a few days ago when we were talking about The Mist. Yes. Two completely different endings, both worked very well. One ambiguous, one very blatant.
Well, the next one, of course, is They're Creeping Up on You. And that one, actually, I didn't remember at all. But rewatching it, let's just say I didn't watch it for very long. I was skimming through it because I couldn't watch... I mean, cockroaches creep me out and just gross me out already.
This is the one that makes my skin crawl out of all the stories. It's not my favorite story at all. It's a good story, but it's not my favorite.
This Upson Pratt character is like a,
Mr. Burns, no,
you know who I'm talking about. Lindbergh, like a Charles Lindbergh.
No, not Lindbergh. Him.
Yeah, we're drawing a blank on his name. But yes, he's locked up in his house where he's total, clean freak, and he's got everything locked down. He's got, video cameras and all this stuff. And, it's just... He's bitching about something on the phone to someone, and then they keep telling him, that the people aren't around and stuff.
Howard Hughes.
My bad. That's
yes. There we go. I mentioned. I did this on Reddit too. I had a bit of a discussion about this movie too, and the connection here and Howard Hughes. The reason I mentioned Mr. Burns earlier is because a lot of people might remember Howard Hughes, at least the idea of Howard Hughes and how crazy he is, and for the story specifically, from that episode when Mr. Burns opens a casino out in Springfield, and he becomes crazy, he locks himself in, sterilized room, goes all long nails, long beard, whacked out of his mind kind of thing. That was Howard Hughes towards the end of his life. That's essentially what this character is right here. He's a Howard Hughes analog. For once, The Simpsons didn't do it first. That's all I have to say.
And basically, he's ruined a lot of people's lives, and he doesn't seem to care. And on the phone call, this woman keeps saying, "I hope you die," or you should die for this. And he basically, his apartment that he's sealed in gets overrun with cockroaches, and he locks himself in that safe room. And when he takes the mattress off the bed and they just keep piling up, it was a bit much. And then, of course, at the very end, and it's a little spoiler here, there's you could tell it's a doll, but they're bursting out of his mouth and his neck. It's just wow.
It's a very grotesque and unsettling story. It's a very much... Stephen King said he says there's two kinds of things that he likes to do. That if he can't wow you, he'll at least gross you out. And this is definitely the gross out story of the entire collection from the first film. My skin crawls watching it. It's really hard for me to watch it. I don't like creepy crawly things too much. They don't really scare me, but they just send shivers down my spine. I'd rather not get near them. And it's the only one that makes me feel unsettled during it. None of these stories are particularly scary. If you're younger, especially because the comics were like that too.
What is kind of scary is actually how it completely ends with the kid that's father even took his comic books away.
Yeah.
He has apparently ordered the voodoo doll out of the back of the comic book and is stabbing his dad in the neck as his dad's complaining, in the other room. I mean, this little kid's vindictive.
Oh, that's right. You hear the father screaming off camera.
Yeah. So he's like, I slept wrong or something, and the kid keeps stabbing his neck. I mean, it's a nice little packaged movie. Some of the stories, aren't as good, but they're actually really short. It's a fun movie to watch.
Yeah.
But as I said in the beginning, Part 2 definitely is my favorite. And I don't want to talk about all of Part 2, but I do want to mention The Raft. Well, that is my favorite.
We've already discussed the interludes. It's a lot. For those who don't know, it's actually animated. It starts off live action and it ends live action, but it's actually, I think it's rotoscoping to a degree, where they actually draw over the stuff that they shot and fill in the gaps, like the special effects, what they would have used. It's really cool how they did it. It really looks like the comic art from like the 1950 comics, the 1960 stories. But The Raft is one of my hands down my favorite story as well.
I'd say out of both movies, it's the one story that holds up the most.
Out of all three official, unofficial Creepshow films.
I'd agree. Yeah,
it's probably my favorite one, and that's saying a lot because there's some really fun stories in this. And I love the short story too. The short story is so close. It's almost a perfect adaptation of it.
But basically, it's 4 college students. They
go down the lake and
a lake far from civilization, and they swim out to this like buoy or
it's a raft.
Oh, this
it's a raft,
this raft that's sitting out there, and they notice this like blob oil slick in the actual lake.
Yeah,
and it's kind of floating near them. And the next thing you know, this oil slick is actually eating them and stuff.
Yeah, and that's quite literally the whole film. It's them struggling to survive while they're stuck on this little raft just a few yards from shore.
But it actually, I think, is one that, I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna get scared to where, oh my god, turn it off, but it actually puts fear into you. You're actually sitting there, your heart starts beating a little faster, and you're just like, what's going to happen with these kids? This is intense.
The key to good horror, like I just said a few moments ago, King says he talks about the gross out. You can either gross out and entertain your audience, or you can go the other direction with horror, which is to fill your audience with dread. And this definitely fills the audience with dread because you know something awful is going to happen. They're very close to safety. And it's just like, well, are they going to get out alive? It's like, especially after the first victim in this story, it's just building worse and worse. Like, the fate that they're going to be, victim to, with the way that this blobbish thing in the lake, deals with them. But you don't know who's going to make it alive or how. And by the end of the story, it's just like it's a giant middle finger at the end of the story.
Don't spoil it.
I'm not going to spoil it, but it's a very intense story, and it's not going to be scary, but it's definitely dreadful. There's a lot of dread because you know what's going to happen. I think we talked about that with Frozen too.
I don't want to go too much into it, but I will just say it will stick with you.
Yes.
And if you ever do find an abandoned lake, I doubt you'll be swimming out to any rafts.
And that was the second story.
Yeah.
Let's keep track. The first one is actually the more entertaining. This one's very much a Tales from the Crypt story, which is Old Chief Woodenhead. It's another vengeance story. Old couple get gunned down by a couple hoodlums from the local Indian reservation and his friends. And they rob the store. They kill the old couple and they leave. The wooden Indian mascot outside their shop.
The cigar Indian, basically.
Yeah, the cigar Indian. He comes to life and he seeks vengeance for the old couple.
And actually, the special effects on this one looked really cool. I liked the way he looked, and he had like his tomahawk and everything.
Mm-hmm. Just the fact that you can see this old wooden Indian moving around, and it doesn't look cheap. It looks like an old wooden Indian walking around. It doesn't seem like a guy in a costume. It's a testament to how George Romero was able to shoot it, because odds are this suit looked pretty tacky when it was moving, but the way he shot it so you only saw so much, and it looked pretty good. The third story, The Hitchhiker, is probably the one I like the least.
It's been done.
Well, it's the classic.
Similar.
It's the classic Hitchhiker story where a woman's driving home and then there's someone trying to hitch a ride and they follow her home. But the twist is there's a big twist to it, which is interesting. I just think it's the least interesting because it's the one, like you said before, it's been done 100 times.
I mean, I remember reading about it in in a dark room. They had the Hitchhiker story, a similar version to it, Yeah.
I
think a lot of even Tales. What is it?
I think Tales from the Crypt actually did an episode of something like this. I might be wrong.
Yeah, the Rod Sterling, the Twilight Zone. They did an old episode of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
There is a nice twist to it to make it its own, but it's still not original enough compared to the other stories, and it's the weakest one. Go ahead and see what I mean by the original by giving the movie a chance. There is no bad story involved in Creepshow 1 or 2, or Unofficial 3, which is Tales from the Dark Side, but there's plenty of great stuff in it as well.
They're just fun to watch.
They're fun.
They're not going to terrify you, but they do creep you out.
Yeah.
They will gross you out.
If you remember the 80s anthologies, if you remember Tales from the Dark Side, if you remember Monsters, even Tales from the Crypt, which was very late 80s, early 90s, if you remember those shows, you're definitely gonna love Creepshow 1 and 2. Don't touch 3, because from what we understand, and we've refused to watch it, is that it had nothing to do with George Romero or Stephen King. They made it
Watch Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, if you're gonna watch. If you need more, you know.
Yep. But you're definitely gonna love these two films.
And actually, you know, I don't agree. I'm looking at IMDb, 6.8 for Creepshow and 5.9 for Creepshow 2. Creepshow 1, I could see a 7.0 easy on it.
Yeah.
But I would give Creepshow 2 higher than a 5.9, definitely. I would go more like maybe an 8, because I thought those 3 stories were solid. I mean, yeah, The Hitchhiker's been done, but they have a twist. You said, I thought they were really solid.
I think maybe if they had opened up with The Hitchhiker rather than closing with it, it might have been a bit stronger. Then again, it's good to always have a strong, you know, we do the juice here, we talk about with wrestling, you open a show with a very strong opening, but you also have to end it strong. Maybe the raft would have been better had it been at the end and had The Hitchhiker in the middle. Yeah, that might have done it a little bit better. As is, I still think it's a solid 8. Creepshow 2 is definitely my favorite. Creepshow 1, there's a lot of stories, but it kind of drags a bit, especially a couple of the stories. So I would give that just a little under a B. It would be a B minus. The second one would definitely be a solid B, B plus. The first one would definitely be a solid B. It's above average. It's better. I still like it better than Tales from the Dark Side, the movie.
I like Tales from the Dark Side, the movie. I think Creepshow 2 and Tales from the Dark Side are my 2 favorites out of the 3.
And I can see that, too. There's just a couple stories in Creepshow 1 that appeal to me more than all 3 stories combined in Tales from the Dark Side. I think there's one that really stands out to me a lot, which is the last one in there, which we talked about in our podcast. Go back and listen to that. The other 2, I like them a lot, but not as much. I definitely wasn't a big fan of the Matthew Lawrence in-betweens as much as the ones that we see here.
The kid with the creep.
Yeah, the kid with the creep. Either kid with a creep. So, I think that's going to do it for this edition of Two Guys, One Movie, Creepshow 1 and Creepshow 2. Not 3, the I Got My Cake edition.
In 3D.
Underwater.
In ice.
And ice. So for that, this is Steve Arviso and
Charles Musick, and I can hold my breath for a long time.